the support group, that was a big thing for me. Because I had never met anybody besides the girls that had come to my school. I had never met anybody who had placed a child for adoption or even considered it. So when I went in there and they had this option, I think I actually went in the day they were holding groups. So I went like the first time I was even thinking about it. And I have never seen a larger group of women who had placed that were real and honest about it. So them being there to like say, this was my experience, and then to be able to walk away from that group and go into talk to my caseworker and say, this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I'm feeling. They had that support to push me through or to help me through what I was thinking and what I was feeling and what I was trying to decide to do. So I just felt like I had extra support, I guess.
I think that's a big benefit of an agency is that there's going to, for sure, or there should be, at least as long as everything's working right, there should be a lot of support, whether it's individual or in groups and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think the advantage even further is that it's there from start to finish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's someone there as you're making that decision and going through the experience and depending on what state you're in, but relinquishment and placement and afterwards. So there's this whole big time frame, and even years down the road. You know what I mean?
And it's all in one place.
It's one place that you can go to. And I think it's a huge benefit because we see girls when they're upset and making a decision and afterwards, you know what I mean? We know them, we understand them and know what they've gone through.
Because you can get that. I think that's one of the things people forget or don't realize. If you do an independent adoption, you can get all of that. You can find all of that. You just may be the one that has to go and find it, and you need to find somebody that can help you find it, and that can and that it makes it more work. It does make it more work. It makes it a little bit more difficult, and so which is why it's really important to work with an attorney that knows adoption. It's important to talk to people and reach out, and so it's a lot more work on your own.
And finding a counselor to go through, add to that, that's maybe a grief counselor or other things, so you get both experiences, like I said, different offices, different places, but you're still getting both.
Yep.
What were some of the advantages you think of doing an independent adoption?
Well, a majority was because the parents were willing to respect my wishes, which was something none of the agencies were willing to do. They weren't willing to talk about it.
More freedom.
It was just cut and dry. Here's what's going to happen, and here's what we're going to do. And none of the discussion was how was I going to be taken care of? Was there counseling that was involved? The only thing that I knew was when I went to the library and I had seen statistics in books. And there was nothing about birth mothers or, relinquishment of stories of any kind. It was psychiatrists basically talking about,
what they thought,
and what birth mothers go through and what the statistics were that, you'd get pregnant again or you weren't capable of maintaining a relationship and the grief process. And so I was reading this going, oh my gosh. So when
You're really a pioneer because
I didn't know that at the time.
Because you weren't going to accept that
the old traditional
the traditional adoption of the agency and following just their policies. And I think that's one of the downfalls of agencies is they get policies that they think are right and they will stick to them and they're not always right.
No.
But then at the same time, then you jump into this, I'm going to do it on my own kind of thing in a time where there wasn't the internet and there wasn't, now there's a lot of resources out there. There's groups.
Oh, there's endless amount of resources out there.
So I think you have a better opportunity now. The agencies, I think, are a little bit better, but also the opportunities to do an independent adoption these days are there's a lot more resources to help you to get through those things.
Yeah, the agencies at the time just didn't offer, which would have been a whole different process had they said, okay, we're here to help you. We're here to help you through this whole process. We understand what you're going through, the grieving process, what to expect. None of that was told to me. And I think the hard part is no one told me the day when you walk into a judge's chamber what was going to be asked of you.
What to expect.
And that I think literally like was the worst of the worst, I think. That was like the icing on the cake for the day. What I would have given to have someone to being able to
Preparation.
explain that versus independently doing it on my own, doing my own research, having conversations with anybody that may kind of have an idea. And so thank heavens for all these, programs and these groups that these women can have a place to go to, places to talk to in counseling. I think it was almost 6 years after I had placed that I actually went and found counseling, because I did what most women do. You just swallow it, pretend it doesn't exist.
Okay.
It didn't, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work. No. It comes out. It comes out.
In everything.
The store, baby screaming, and go home in tears, and you're like, it would have been so nice to know that, to have someone to acknowledge this roller coaster. They had no concept of understanding why, which is a whole nother story.
And that's I work in a lot of independent adoptions, and that is the thing I stress with the adoptive parents a lot is you need to pay for counseling. They actually have to offer it legally in the state we're in beforehand, but I say pay for counseling afterwards if they need
I had
it.
asked, actually, that's funny you said that. I had actually asked, and they said no. That wasn't part of the deal. And not knowing, and not knowing, I just went, oh, okay, just I was really naive because I didn't know the law. I didn't know it was capable of doing it or not. So, it was definitely pioneering, as you put it.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't wish that on anybody. So,
Be educated. I mean, it's do your research and find out which is going to work best.
Yeah, and I think you have to do the research whether you're going with an agency or not, because the agency also may not tell you everything, and they may not, you need to ask a lot of questions, and if you feel like you need something, you need to find somebody that'll help you get that.
Best match.
Can I say, as a birth mother, and maybe you can agree with this, when you get to that point in your life where you're deciding and you're making this decision, you almost made it your life mission to make sure you get as much information as you possibly can, because this decision is going to be a lifelong consequence, and you want to make sure that all your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
At least for me, I couldn't dig up enough books in the library, which again were so minimal.
Yeah.
So I remember just making notes going, well, I'm not going to have that happen, and I'm going to make sure this isn't going to happen. I'm sure not going to do this, It was all the negatives, and I kept thinking, well, I'm not going to be this person. And so, I made it this mission to get as much information as I could, so I wouldn't be one of those statistics that they were referring to as birth mothers, failing kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm not going to fail. And it was that old stigma that I think, people put birth mothers in and what adoption is. And thank heavens it's changing. Slowly, but it's changing.
Yeah.
Slowly, but it's changing.